mean, maybe I wasn't supposed to, but I really enjoyed the EVO ONE.
What do you mean you weren't supposed to?
I don't know. Look, I was going through all the comments to try to figure out how to approach this Unplugged for the Cambridge EVO ONE review we just did.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling a little bit.
Okay.
And honestly, I kind of even wonder what Cambridge Audio thinks about our review. I mean, well, specifically some of the comments and reactions enthusiasts seem to be having.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, I'm never surprised to see the naysayers that come out anytime we talk about something like a soundbar, especially when they have a Sonos or a Samsung badge on them. I mean, yeah, nothing is ever going to be as good as, whatever.
Sure.
But even I'm starting to question, like, what I consider hi-fi to be. So I actually looked up the definition of the word hi-fi.
Okay.
And according to the Oxford Dictionary, you can use the word hi-fi as either an adjective or a noun. I think we typically use it as an adjective.
Okay.
It is of or used for or relating to the reproduction of music or other sound with high fidelity. Example, hi-fi equipment.
Okay.
Like I said, you could also use it as a noun, as in it's a set of equipment for playing recorded music in high fidelity sound. But you know what? It doesn't say anything about having to have two speakers or a separate amp.
This is true.
I suppose that would technically be hi-fi stereo or stereo hi-fi. I don't know. Maybe it's just a matter of semantics, or maybe hi-fi needs some rebranding, Maybe it needs a PR company to come in and help everyone truly understand what hi-fi means, what it can be. I mean, if we didn't see at least one comment like the one from Breathe Easy, I'd probably have to double check to see if the video even went live. Breathe Easy 2693 says, amazing. I can now throw out my 6 KLIPSCH speakers, my battery of Crown power amps, and my Midas M32 for this soundbar.
I mean, you know what? Yes, you can. Just you, though. Just you, though. Only you.
Now, this one from MU-SO is kind of the perfect example of what audiophiles seem to be as the acceptable line in the proverbial sand.
Okay.
Of where the crossover between traditional hi-fi and everything else is allowed to coexist.
All right.
So MU-SO says, I don't doubt this is a good product, and I am a Cambridge fan, but this is a Me Too system. That name started with the MU-SO 11 years ago, and Rourke makes a similar all-in-one too. So this holds no interest for me whatsoever. However, I'm still expecting you to review the Marantz Horizon, Grand Horizon. Yeah, I know. As a stereo pair, especially since it also has HDMI, apart from given streaming. It's far more compelling, albeit expensive. And when I saw this comment, and this one just actually came in this morning.
Yeah.
Before we started taping, and when I saw that, I was like, "Holy, that's it! Like that's the dichotomy of the audiophile in black and white."
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack in that comment. I appreciate the comment. I do. There's a lot to unpack there.
But I am trying to understand the audience a little better, and just trying to decipher like how you, the viewer, decides what is acceptable versus what isn't. And also, again, going back to what I said at the beginning, like I wonder what a brand like Cambridge Audio is thinking, because they are an established brand.
Oh yeah.
Very traditional, even though they do make more modern type products. I mean, like they're not, in other words, what I mean is they do make products that include modern conveniences.
Oh, for sure.
Like streaming and things like that, which it seems like audiophiles are okay with,
Now,
and yeah,
10 years ago, we were having all of these same arguments against streaming's evil and this, that, and the other thing. But yeah, like you said, it just took a couple of little tweaks and some rebranding. And now suddenly it's the hottest topic in all of hi-fi. So maybe we're just...
I mean, you could have a whole channel dedicated just to streaming.
I mean,
and
some
DACs,
people do. Yeah.
So yeah, this one was a little surprising, not surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, if we didn't get a comment like "breathe easies," I'm gonna just throw away, my whole system.
Yeah.
I would question whether or not anyone was watching.
Yeah.
But I do have to, like, where are we going? Where are we going here?
I mean, whether you want to admit it or sad but true, however you want to phrase it, where we're going is more in line with the EVO ONE than all the people that rally against it. And that's just the truth. That's reality. And I've said it before, so I don't want to just continue to bang this same drum, but if you don't think the future is powered smart speakers and DSP and, all the tricks that we have been able to unlock through digital technology, science, just our better understanding of sound and physics and space and things like that, psychoacoustics, all of those things, if you don't think that all of those things are coalescing into simpler, smaller, powered products, okay. And even the stuff that is going to look and or appeal to more traditional hi-fi enthusiasts, of which I count myself as one of them. Like, I still like seeing two speakers. I still like a bunch of speakers around me. I want them to be stylish or hidden, but I still value the experience of having two discrete speakers, or 5 or 7 or 9. But I also want all of the tech that can be thrown at that problem to be thrown at them too. And it's going to be. And there's going to be the accessible, affordable, everyday stuff. And then there's going to be like the ultra high end where that same mindset is going to be applied to just cost no object. And you're going to see some really insane things. And that's evident in like the BeoLab 90. It's evident in what you're even seeing more mainstream brands like Marantz, to speak of the Grand Horizon. Like, who saw that coming from Marantz? Whether it's good or it's bad or anything like that, we don't know yet, but who had that product on their bingo card from Marantz? Probably not many. I know I didn't. So it's coming, and you can want it not to, you can fight against it. But I think you risk missing, I don't want to say FOMO, like fear of missing out. I think you just risk missing out on what could potentially be worthwhile experiences. Maybe they don't ultimately end up being experiences for you. But, I once did a hot lap, in a supercar. And while I can't afford the supercar, I don't necessarily want to drive said supercar on a real road going to the shops. I'm still really grateful for the experience. Was the car loud? Yeah. Was it hot? Yeah. Was it uncomfortable? You bet. Not great for daily driving. But if I would have just been like, there's no practicality to this car, I'm not getting in it, I would have never had that experience of going close to 200 miles an hour around a track. That's all.
Yeah, going back to what you said about who had something like the Horizon on the bingo card for Marantz. I mean, I can't even imagine what it is like to be an established brand like Marantz or Cambridge or even Focal. We have a review coming up of that, one of their speakers. like, what is it like for them to try and walk the line just so?
Yeah.
Because they don't want to lose their core audience that's been with them for years and years and years. But they also know that they need to adapt to stay relative. And also, I'm sure there's a huge curiosity for the people that work at those types of brands
Yeah.
to want to continue to grow and come up with new technologies and a new way of enjoying hi-fi, which again is a set of equipment for playing recorded music in high fidelity sound.
Yeah.
You know, that has to be such a internal struggle, I'm sure, even for them. And again, or not again, but I know I've only been really knowledgeable, I would say, about hi-fi products and just the audio industry for a short time compared to a lot of you. But I still have been a fan of listening to music, and I've done that in so many different ways.
Yeah.
You know, like I have allowed myself to go on a journey as going back to being a kid, you know, when I was allowed to touch the system, you know, putting on a record or listen, you know, tuning the station to whatever music I wanted to hear,
Yeah.
to when I had my own little, you know, boombox kind of a setup where, you know, I would listen to music on the radio and then hit the play record button at the exact right time so I could make my own, you know, little mixtape. To the invention of CDs and DVDs for movies and MP3 players and, you know, to streaming how as we know it today. And
Yeah.
I've enjoyed every one of those experiences. And I wish more audiophiles would allow themselves to be open to those things and to go on the journey
Yeah.
for themselves. I mean, even if you decide ultimately that it's not for you, you still went there.
Yeah, you still have to know it's something that you don't want for yourself. And the only way to really know is if you experience it.
Yeah.
I think anyway.
I mean, I think so, you know. I mean, like this one person said, if you are and I think they're kind of quoting you from the review.
Okay.
If you are a streaming music listener at home, you probably use it wrong. Because streaming music is for the car or a gym. A home music player must be able to either play a CD, SACD, or grab it to a hard solid disc.
What?
Yeah, I mean, it's just this very myopic worldview of what is possible.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I really struggle with wanting to provide content for people at every step of their journey
Yeah.
and interest level.
No, I hear you. I do. I mean, as far as programming on this channel is concerned, I mean, you see the breadth of what we talk about because all of it's interesting to me. You know, I love sound bars, same as I do a nice pair of like B&W 800 signatures. I think you can like both and there's room for both. And as with anything, when your identity becomes about one thing, this is just from me, my personal take on it, but when your identity kind of becomes one thing or one way of doing something, like you're boring. It becomes really boring. It becomes kind of like, it's like...
Well, even more importantly, I feel it becomes more difficult to learn about what it is you are so enthusiastic about. Because if I only listen to $40,000 speakers, or I only listen to a system that's made up of a DAC, an amp, a traditional pair of passive speakers,
Sure.
Or conversely, if I only listen to sound bars,
Yeah.
it becomes a lot harder to try to educate people on what your different experience could be.
Yeah, I mean, you might become a quote expert or a really, really good, commentator on what it is that you specialize in, and that's fine. But at the same time, what I fear, or what I think happens in the hobby, and even maybe among people in positions like mine, is if you don't have the breadth of experience with other things, and I'm not saying you have to be an expert in all things, I'm just saying if you don't readily have the type of experiences that go beyond, say, your niche, your specialty, but you still feel the need to comment, positive or negative, because it can be both, positive or negative against that which you don't understand or don't use, it muddies the water because people don't always understand that about what you're saying. So when you come at something like the EVO ONE, bringing it back to Cambridge, and you're just like, this isn't X, Y, or Z. This can't be X, Y, or Z. And only two things, a separate this, separate that, that's the only way to do it. And then someone like me comes along and says, while I'm not disagreeing that your way doesn't also work, we have 75, 100 years of it working. Have you actually tried this thing, though? And more often than not, the answer is no, they haven't. They're just conjecturing based on, more often than not, what's been they're parroting what they've been told by someone else. And if you start unraveling the game of telephone all the way back, a lot of this stuff has its roots in an era where, yeah, okay, sure, let's, oh God, I hate to bring this up, but like the original Bose wave radio, back in like 1988, 1989, whenever it was launched and sold on like QVC and stuff like that. Maybe that wasn't as good of a product as it could be or would be today if it were made. But because so many people in our hobby were of a very influential time in their life or age around that time, they've kind of cemented their views. And so that brush paints a lot of pictures now in our current present. And it's just never a good idea. It's never a good idea to paint your current picture with tools from the past, because while you need to remember history, you need to remember where you came from. History is important. If you hang on to it too hard, it kind of poisons your future, because not everything in the past is freaking great, And so part of hanging on to the past is learning from it and realizing that maybe, yeah, something like a Bose wave radio was maybe amazing or good or bad, whatever you want to view it as in the early 90s. But that's not to say that today is the same thing.
Well, I liked the EVO ONE.
I think it's a really compelling product.
I thought it was, now, is it the same as having a separate system? No. Of course it's not.
No.
But there are use cases where something like the EVO ONE may really work for somebody.
Hell yeah.
I thought the sound was good.
Mm-hmm.
It has that sort of Cambridge sound
Yep.
that I'm used to.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought it worked very nicely as a way to elevate your television speakers.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a sound bar.
No.
Necessarily. But if you're looking for something that has a bit of hybrid functionality, you want something that feels or sounds a little bit more hi-fi, I think this could be a good route to go, especially if you also need it to act as your TV speakers.
Yeah.
So for people who live in smaller spaces, I'm sure a lot of our European audience can relate to this, because, I was a little surprised to learn when we did that video a few weeks ago about basically laying out a room for
the small space room.
For a small space.
Yeah.
Even as an American, our idea of a small space is not small enough when it comes to the European
markets. Yeah,
like
for sure.
they're even in I think what was our example was a 10-foot by 12-foot.
10 by 12, which according to Google is a small bedroom.
Right. Even that is a little large for some Europeans.
Yeah.
Now, for that audience, I think something like the Cambridge Audio EVO ONE could be a great option because it does give you access to what I think has typically been known as a hi-fi component.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe a traditional soundbar isn't going to give you that. I thought it was very clear and intelligible. I don't remember really struggling to understand dialogue when we were watching TV or movies with it. And I did enjoy it for music listening as well.
Yeah. I mean, it really, the way that I started to look at it, because like I said, we lived with it in a couple of different places in our house. And I really just started to look at it and it's like, you know what this is? It's kind of Cambridge Audio's greatest hits compilation, all in one product. If you really want to get a feel, like if maybe this is your first foray into hi-fi, and you really want to get a feel for what Cambridge Audio is like all about, this is a great way to kind of experience almost everything that they do in one package, because the streaming experience inside the EVO ONE is more or less identical to like the CXN 100. The phono preamp is, I wouldn't be surprised if it shares some similarities, if it's not exactly the same as like the standalone phono preamp that they offer. So you've got a lot, it's got a lot going for it. And obviously Cambridge makes speakers as well in various lower, more obtainable price points. And it's got all of that too. So I actually really liked it. I really did. And I agree with you. In certain rooms or environments or people starting out, I can think of way worse decisions to make when making a financial purchase into the hi-fi hobby than this. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you can buy an AVR and a couple of speakers and all of that. You can for about the same money, for sure. No one's saying you can't. But at the same time, like, that may not be an option. A lot of people going back to that small spaces video. It's like some people were like, well, I just don't have room for that credenza. I know that it's all very functional and I get multi-use out of it, but I still don't even have room for that. Okay, well then you don't really have room for stereo separation anyway, in which case something like the EVO ONE would be beneficial to you, or a soundbar like a Sonos Arc Ultra or something like that, because it's going to give you a better facsimile within the space that you have.
I do want to answer a couple of our viewer questions.
Oh, okay.
Starting with one of the more obvious ones, at Turbo Egan says, another outstanding review, A&K. I appreciate you looking at and reviewing lifestyle all-in-one products, which, as you alluded to, might be a great entry point into the hi-fi space. Can you go into more detail on more use cases, which I think we've just done, in comparison to a $1,500 system of separate components on Friday's show? So I think what they're asking for is a comparison to an equivocable experience in the more traditional way.
Okay.
With a price point at $1,500 all in.
Sure. And you know what? Here, I'll keep it within Cambridge and make it real simple on myself. You could do a pair of Cambridge's bookshelf speakers or tower speakers or any bookshelf speaker. Let's take the ELAC Debut 3.0s.
Well, that's not Cambridge.
I know, but I'm going to keep everything else Cambridge. I'm going to go with those because I trust them. I like them. I have experience with them recently. ELAC Debut 3.0, then we're going to get ourselves something like an AXR 100 from Cambridge Audio or an AXA 3585, I think that one of them is, one of their integrateds. Then you're going to need to add a streamer. We can take the MXN10, it's $499. I think that's what it is, MXN10. Or if you want the screen and you want all that cool stuff, you could go with the CXN. I don't think you're going to be able to get the CXN 100 though, because if memory serves, that's $1,000. So $1,000 plus $450 for the speakers plus $300 to $500 for the integrated amp, we're over budget. But let's just say we use the little...
Okay, well, I want to jump in here really quickly.
Yeah.
So the CXN 100, which is...
It's a streamer.
A streamer audio, Wi-Fi network audio player.
Yeah.
It has, internet radio, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That is $1,099.
Okay, so it's $1,100. In which case, you still need a power source, which let's just go with an AXA 35. Nice little analog only integrated amp. I think that's $300. Before we even add $400. So before we even add speakers, we're at $1,500. And I know some people are going to be in the comments like, you can get ELACs and a WIM amp and you're going to be set. Okay, so not untrue. So $450 a pair for the speakers, $400 for the WIM amp. We're at just $900 after cables. So that is less expensive. I now have stereo imaging. I have streaming. I have this. I have that. Depending on your use case, it could be everything you need. But if your use case falls even a little bit outside of what something like a WIM amp is comfortable with in terms of volume, power load of the speaker itself, the complexity of the music you like to listen to, you are not going to have a comparable experience to even something like the EVO ONE, because the WIM amp may struggle. It could become fatiguing in the high frequencies. It could overheat and want to shut down, so on and so forth. And yes, these things can and do happen, despite everyone praising these TI-based chip amps. They have known issues around stuff like this. A lot of people don't run into it because they use it for desktop and near field, and you don't play as loud in the near field, which is those type of amplifiers bread and butter. But something like an EVO ONE does not make you have to choose. And something like a traditional, even an AXA 35 with a streamer and 2 pairs of speakers isn't necessarily going to make you have to restrict your usability or use cases the way some of these more super affordable TI-based chip amps might. What are you going to get differently? You're going to get a little bit more spatial separation by having, a pair of speakers. You just are. That's just the nature of 2 speakers being further apart. But in order to achieve that, you have to have the real estate to pull those things further apart. I see a lot of systems, and I'm not saying this to disparage anyone, but I go on Reddit or I'm on Google, and I see a lot of images of, people that have tower speakers even that are basically only the width of a 42 or 50-inch television apart. That's not even necessarily 3 feet. And while it is possible to get some imaging and all of that, when you watch at least our reviews or when I talk about soundstage and imaging, I'm not sure there would be that big of a difference between the oral experience in terms of width and depth that I experienced with the EVO ONE and a pair of bookshelf speakers that are really only about 3 feet apart. Now, there's a huge difference if those bookshelf speakers are 6, 7, 8, 9 feet apart, which is how I describe soundstage. But I do realize that when I describe soundstage, I might actually be talking about an experience that many people never get the opportunity to have. And they're basing it on their speakers being 2.5, 3 feet apart. And if that's the case, the EVO ONE's actually not going to be that radically different.
They're also sitting a lot of these situations Andrew is describing, because I've seen the images too. The listening position is, I mean, if it's 4 or 5 feet away, I would be shocked.
Yeah, and
so you're very, I mean, that's more of a near field experience.
And it's going to be more of a monaural one too, in which case you might actually be more of a candidate for the EVO ONE than you even realize. It might actually be a solution for what ails you in a way that you weren't expecting. Because for so long, maybe someone told you, it's like you have to have 2 and this and that. But what they didn't tell you is separate everything can be great, but if you can't separate separates everything, you might just be throwing a bunch of money down the well and not coming away with the experience that a lot of people have told you you're going to have just by doing this. And, you know, I can take $50,000 loudspeakers and make them sound like $50 speakers. You don't have to do it. It's not actually hard. It's not hard. It's actually easier to take something really expensive and make it sound like shit than it is to buy something expensive and make it sound as good as the price tag warrants. And you got to keep that in mind. Setup is everything. Setup is everything. And one of the things that the EVO ONE, like a lot of powered speakers, and one of the things that I think is 2 powered speakers, smart speakers benefit is they're taking some of that guesswork out, some of the variables for screwing up out of the equation, so that at a minimum, you get a cohesive, coherent, repeatable hi-fi experience.
Well, speaking of other powered speakers, GTRX Man wanted to know, says, looks like a nice product at a competitive price. The all-in-one simplicity is something that Bose milked for a long time. How would you compare this to a combination of a WIM Pro Streamer and KLIPSCH 7s, which are powered speakers?
Again, you're going to be able to do separation because, and we can go KLIPSCH 7s, we can go KEF LSX or KEF LS50 wireless 2s, all the way to like Kanto. This is going to be universal to all of those. Just the only thing that's going to vary really is what connection options that they have. In theory, by going with 2 separate speakers, any of which I just rattled off, including the 7s, if you have the space to physically distance them, you will have a greater sense of stereo imaging, a broader, potentially wider soundstage with a more virtual phantom center, as opposed to the EVO ONE, where the center is not phantom at all. That's where the bulk of the sound is coming from. So you're not using oral trickery with hearing in your brain to fill in the center. You have something in the center that then kind of tries to fill out the sides. So it's just kind of like we all want that center image to be as strong as possible. When listening to a stereo set of speakers, it's good dispersion, it's good this, it's good that. So it's funny, like a lot of these smart speakers and sound bars, it's like, okay, well, we start from the strong point in the center and then we work our way outwards, where in stereo, we have on the outside working our way in. But that's going to be the difference. Everything else, it's just going to be about scale, because yeah, KLIPSCH 7s are probably going to play a little louder, a little deeper, a little bit more dynamic, more punchy compared to the EVO ONE. But conversely, if I have a KEF LSX or a wireless 2, KEF LS50 wireless 2, you may find that sound to be more neutral, more nuanced, a little less punchy, a little less V-shaped curve. So sound profiles come down to personal taste and what you gravitate towards. So the Cambridge is probably somewhere right in the middle, you know, not quite as fun, energetic, and punchy as KLIPSCH, but nowhere near as like just the facts, ma'am, as KEF. So probably somewhere right in the middle, which is why I think I said in the review, like, I have a feeling a lot of you will like the tonality of the EVO ONE and may even find aspects of its sound to be kind of nostalgic. Because it's kind of warm and it just sounds really good. And it's not a scalpel, you know, but it's also not vague or mushy. It's really nice.
Cool Pandas wants to know, can two, meaning of two EVO ones, be paired together for a more immersive stereo sound?
I don't believe that's possible. No. Nope. And I don't think that that's what you want. I can't even imagine a setup where I've got two of those like off to each side. Now you can group them. Like let's say you own two and you had one in your living room and one in your study or one in your bedroom. You would be able to group them and have whole home distributed wireless audio that way and control them as one within the app. But I don't believe it's possible to stereo pair two of them side by side to get the stereo experience.
Bike Dave, question, serious question.
Okay.
Does the EVO have an alarm clock function on it?
It has a clock function on it. I'm going to beg your forgiveness in saying that I did not test or look into whether or not the clock function of it has an alarm attached to it. But editor Andrew, do this man a favor. Answer here.
Spudzuka would like to know, how portable is the EVO ONE? Is it constructed in a way where it could easily be taken on a road trip, i.e. not too fragile or crazy heavy?
It's built really well. It is heavier. I don't know the weight off the top of my head, but it's far more substantial than I was even expecting. The base is metal. The little stand that kind of lifts it up off the ground is metal, and that has some substantial girth and kind of heft to it. It's not a product that you're just going to, I mean, can you carry it one-handed? Sure. But it's not a product you're just going to like scoop up and go. If portability is something that you're after, you're going to be better off with something like a Sonos Move 2, Bang & Olufsen Level, or the A5, which has a literal handle on the Bang & Olufsen A5 has a literal handle. Hell, I'm going to argue the larger A9 is actually easier to move than the EVO ONE.
Oh, I don't know if I agree with that.
It's got a handle.
I don't care if
It's
it has
got a
a
handle.
handle. It's pretty heavy and it's a little awkward.
It's an awkward shape, but it is easier to grab and walk with than the EVO ONE. You're gonna carry like this. So imagine carrying a larger Yamaha amplifier. I'm not talking hundreds of pounds, but 40, 45 pounds in an amplifier like style to and from places. Whereas an A5 from Bang & Olufsen, a Level, just go.
I honestly, Spudzuka, I think it really depends on where and how you're taking it on said road trip.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, maybe you have an RV. And you have space in your RV where maybe you have a small television, and in that case, I think the EVO ONE would work out really nicely.
It could.
It would be able to function as your TV soundbar, and then you could also listen to it for music.
Yep.
And I would see no reason why that wouldn't work.
And it's heavy enough too that it's not going to jostle around as long as it's on a stable surface.
Yeah. But if you're looking for the grab and go, then I think one of the best options Andrew mentioned was the Sonos Move 2, or even their Roam would work.
It's a little smaller, yeah.
Or like the A5, which has the little lunchbox handle.
Yeah.
I think that would be the better solution. Is it fragile?
The EVO ONE?
The EVO ONE, I would say, gosh, it's, honestly, it's very hard to know just how well something's going to hold up, because a lot of times, guys and gals, we get review samples. So as some of you pointed out, my God forbid, we didn't come out with a review of this product when it was first launched. We waited a whole 4 months later. And the first one we received arrived kind of there's like a little stand that it sits on.
Yeah, the base. Yeah,
that base was broken, or it didn't sit quite level on top of it.
Yeah,
I don't blame that on like the construction or the build quality.
No.
Of the product. I just think this thing got shipped around a bunch. I don't know how careful anyone else is when they're repackaging products. I mean, we get stuff broken all the time that's come from another reviewer.
Yeah.
And so in that case, you would want to be careful, but I don't think just by looking at it, it's going to break.
No, the only thing that I would advise against is the wood top is something you're going to have to keep up with, just a nice mild cleaner, and I would avoid putting it in direct sunlight. One of the places that we had our EVO ONE out was on a console table below a window, and I noticed that even after about a week, sun discoloration from this window was affecting the wood top of the EVO ONE. Again, not Cambridge's fault. But this is not a synthetic type material, and it will react to exposure.
Okay, well, John Tucker would like to know, how would you compare this single unit to the Bang & Olufsen A9, which I know you love? And I know you talked about the A9 a second ago in terms of what you think is portability, but let's talk about the sound.
Oh, the A9 is it's bigger. It's bigger. It's more capable. It's more full range. It's more tunable. It has room correction, unlike the EVO ONE, which just has basically boundary compensation. At $2,900, I believe it is.
No,
$3,900. $3,900. You are getting a demonstrably better product. You do not get like a screen to show you metadata and cover art and stuff like that.
And there's no HDMI, I don't think.
There is no HDMI. You could still hook it up to a television because it does have physical inputs. You could use like an optical cable or an adapter that may turn HDMI into something like a BeoLink or whatever. You'd have to talk to a dealer or call up Steve at Sounds Heavenly to see what kind of custom Frankenstein cables he has, because he can do wonders. So anything with Bang & Olufsen is typically possible, and you can also get two A9s and stereo pair them and have, probably a pretty killer system. I would rather have the A9, I would, compared to the EVO ONE, but I understand that the EVO ONE is about a third as much money. The better facsimile for the EVO ONE is like how I say in my review, it's more like the Balance or an A5. Those are going to be a little bit more comparable in price, or something I completely forgot, which was the Biosound Stage, which is Bang & Olufsen's sound bar that is around $1,700 to $2,200, depending on finish. That's really going to be the comparable apples to apples here. And in that instance, I'm still going to say the Biosound Stage is actually a little bit better, a little bit more flexible, and overall from a sonic perspective is going to give, I think, people, even for a little more, like $200-$300 more money, a more complete experience for both music and movies.
Can you hook up a record player though?
To a Biosound Stage? You would have to use an adapter cable or make sure that your record player has a built-in phono preamp. But yeah, you should be able to. It doesn't have a built-in phono preamp the way that the EVO ONE has, and it doesn't have dedicated RCA inputs, I don't believe. But you could use the mini 3.5 millimeter jack to RCA adapter with the Biosound Stage, and as long as your turntable had a built-in phono preamp, or if your turntable is like the Alva TTV2 and has Bluetooth built in, you could just Bluetooth to the Biosound Stage.
Yeah, the stage is a really,
It's a phenomenal product.
really great little system, and I am surprised that we forgot to
That's on me.
bring that up in the review, but
That's on me.
I could make a case for both.
Yeah.
Back to the A9, I mean, I love the A9. It's so amazing. If you want to use it with your TV, though, I really believe you need two of them and separate them. Enough room. It is a big product, so you would need also the room and space to separate them if you want to use them along with your television. It's far too big to just use one.
I mean, if your TV's mounted high enough, I guess you could
But we
use
don't
one.
recommend that.
We don't recommend that. So in order for your TV to be at the proper height and use a single A9, I think the A9 is going to bisect the bottom of the television and obscure your image. So just keep that in mind. I'm probably going to end up buying another A9 just so that I can finally talk to you guys about the stereo experience with two of them, because I'm beyond curious at this point.
I think it would sound great.
I have a feeling I'd have a hard time unpairing them
Yeah.
and going to anything else.
I know that you brought up the NAIM MU-SO in the review,
Yeah.
and because it had been such a long time since we've had that system,
Yeah.
as much as we really loved it, we couldn't really offer a sound comparison. It would just be based off of memory.
Sure.
But we did get somebody in our comments who works for a hi-fi retailer in the UK, and they sell both the EVO and the NAIM MU-SO. And they said the EVO is, again, this is in their opinion, the EVO is miles better in terms of sound than the NAIM. It's much warmer and unfussy. You throw anything at this, it just plays and manages to sound humongous and undistorted, even at the highest of volumes.
Again, I don't know. I'm not going to comment on how they compare, but one thing that this person just said that I find to be my experience as well is the EVO ONE is not fussy. It's not fussy. Everything I played through it sounded good, if not great. And that, at the end of the day, isn't that really all we want? You know what I mean? Like sometimes when people start unraveling all the fussy ways, like, oh, this system only is really good for this, but you don't want to play it. That's like, isn't that a fail? You know what I mean? Like, shouldn't it be able to do everything? Especially when we're spending money and taking up real estate in our lives and stuff like that. So I again, can't compare the two, but I will say that the EVO ONE was pretty agnostic when it came to what do you want to listen to?
Yeah. Well, do you have anything else you want to bring up?
I don't. I really liked it, and I'm grateful that we stuck with it, and Cambridge sent us a replacement because the first one arrived damaged. I'm grateful that they sent a replacement, so we were able to bring you this review whenever we brought it to you. Sorry, it wasn't hot on the heels of its release, but we wanted to make sure we got it right. And Cambridge is putting out some really great products, and I know, especially lately, and I know that we've been a little critical of some of them, but this might be my favorite Cambridge experience in the past year. And I know we're going back into 2024 because 2025 just started, but I think 4 or 5 Cambridge pieces in the last year that we've reviewed, this one might be my favorite, and I do mean it when I say it's kind of like a compilation album of what the brand can do all in one piece, and I loved it. I really did.
I enjoyed it myself, and I think it could be great for a lot of people. Is it going to be for everyone? No, but nothing ever is. So
there you go.
Well, I think that's everything.
Okay.
Guys, gals, we will see you Sunday.
Yes.
With another interesting video.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Not going to want to miss this one.
Yeah. So hopefully you'll give that a watch, and we'll see you when we see you.
All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. See you Sunday. Bye.